From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. English learners know that prepositions can be difficult to master. There are 94 one-word prepositions in English and about 56 prepositions with two or more words called complex prepositions. This adds up to 150 chances to make mistakes. Here are a few explanations of different prepositions that use the verb provide. To provide can be followed by an indirect object. English speakers use the preposition with. To provide someone with something means to give something wanted or needed. To provide for is another verb preposition combination. To provide for means to make whatever is necessary for someone available to them. We use this expression often when we talk about parents providing for their family. This preposition can also be used in other ways. To provide for can also mean to make it possible for something to happen in the future. When provide is followed by a direct object, English speakers can use the prepositions to or for. To provide something to or for someone means that you deliver or give something to someone. For example, the company provides health insurance to all of its employees. In this example, we also could have said, the company provides health insurance for all of its employees. Both of these sentences are correct, but it is more common to use provide something for than provide something to someone. English prepositions can be difficult, even for native speakers, but we hope that we have been able to provide some assistance. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Agricultural experts have launched a land and water management project in the Middle East. The project seeks to increase food security in dry areas. Researchers say the water availability in some of the areas has dropped well below the internationally recognized standard. Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, the West Bank, Syria, and Yemen are all taking part in the project. It is part of a larger 10-year effort called the Water and Livelihoods Initiative. The project is also expected to increase household income for farmers in the areas. The United States Agency for International Development provided $1 million for the Water and Livelihoods Initiative. Scott Christensen is an agricultural development advisor with USAID. He helped develop the project while working for the International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas. He says the countries taking part in the project were all carefully selected. He said they all share a socio-economic and cultural history. Research by the International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas and its partners has already proven to be successful. New irrigation methods are expected to double wheat production while using 1/3 of the water required for full irrigation. Experts say the new methods also increase crop production up to 5 times more than crops that depend on rainfall only. The International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas will provide technical support for the project. Officials from the International Water Management Institute and the International Food Policy Research Institute are also taking part in the effort. Each team will be joined by experts from local research institutions, universities, and government agencies. Scott Christensen said his group has good partnerships among the countries so that they can learn lessons from each other and work together effectively. He and other officials met in Amman, Jordan in February. They attended an international conference on food security and climate change in dry areas. Nearly 1/4 of the world's people live in these areas. Officials say more must be done to deal with water shortages in agriculture. If not, they say, the future of food security, economic development, and social stability in dry areas will be put at risk. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
I'm Carolyn Presutti with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. White rice is the world's most popular form of rice, but it goes through a milling process that removes many nutrients. As a result, people who eat a poor diet based on white rice may not get enough vitamin A. Each year, an estimated 250,000 to 500,000 children go blind from vitamin A deficiency. The World Health Organization says half of them die within a year of losing their sight. Vitamin A deficiency is a problem, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia. So scientists thought of an answer. They combined white rice with plant compounds that the body can change into vitamin A. The rice contains beta-carotene and other carotenoids. These plant colorings give the rice a golden color. The scientists also thought of a plan to give away this golden rice for free to poor farmers. But the rice is genetically engineered. They say it cannot be made using traditional methods to breed plants. The scientists worked for 10 years until 1990 to develop the technology to add genes to rice. Then it took 9 more years to get the genes they wanted into the seed. The first field tests took place in 2004 at Louisiana State University in the United States. Golden rice is currently being tested in the Philippines. It is still not available for general use. Co-inventor Ingo Petrikas says rice with 2 added genes will be available in the year 2013. One gene comes from maize or corn, and the other from a soil bacterium. Mr. Petrikas is retired from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. He blames the delays on too many rules about genetically modified crops. Opponents say such crops may cause environmental damage by breeding with conventional plants. Opponents also question the safety of biotech foods. Mr. Patrikas says golden rice has never been shown to be unsafe for the environment or people. Many agriculture organizations support the project. But there are also critics, including researchers for the environmental group Greenpeace. Several months ago, they questioned whether golden rice could do much for vitamin A deficiency. They said releasing genetically modified rice in Asia could permanently change traditional rice varieties and wild ancestors of rice. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. For more news about rice research, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. President Obama is proposing rules to limit the size of big banks and the risks they can take. He wants to prevent banks from using government-insured deposits to make risky investments. He also wants to keep them from owning hedge funds or private equity funds. Banks took big losses as they traded mortgage-backed securities that went bad. That helped create the financial crisis. Bank shares fell after the president's announcement in January. His earlier efforts at financial reform have faced strong opposition from financial companies and some members of Congress. In the Senate, 60 votes are needed to prevent unlimited debate on a bill. But the Democrats lost their 60th vote. In January, voters in Massachusetts elected a Republican to finish the term of Ted Kennedy, who died in August. Scott Brown opposes the health care legislation in Congress. His election could also affect other areas, like climate change legislation and reforms in the financial system. A separate development in January could affect future elections. The United States Supreme Court cleared the way for unlimited spending by businesses and labor unions in political campaigns. The court voted 5-4 to end a ban on the use of corporate money to pay for independent campaign ads for or against candidates. The court said the restriction on political speech violated the free speech rights guaranteed by the Constitution. But President Obama said the decision will reduce the influence of average Americans. He called it a major victory for powerful interests like big oil companies, Wall Street banks, and health insurance companies. He directed his administration to talk with congressional leaders from both parties to develop a forceful response. Elections for Congress are this November. The next presidential election is in 2012. January 20th marked Barack Obama's first anniversary in office, but the Republican victory in liberal Massachusetts was seen in large part as a sign of voter anger across the country about the economy. Unemployment has doubled in 2 years to 10%. Many people are angry that they struggle while the government rescued big banks. Some banks took losses last year, but others earned record profits. And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Scientists say a study in Africa shows that AIDS drugs can increase life expectancy in patients to nearly normal levels. One of the authors was Dr. Jean Nshega of South Africa's Stellenbosch University and the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in Baltimore, Maryland. He says the major finding is that patients in Africa receiving antiretroviral therapy for HIV can expect to live a near normal lifespan. The findings appear in the Annals of Internal Medicine. Over the last 30 years, the HIV/AIDS epidemic cut 15 to 20 years or more from life expectancy rates in Africa. Dr. Nshega says those rates had gained sharply in many countries in the past because of access to clean water and expanded immunization programs. The study took place in Uganda, where life expectancy at birth is an average of about 55 years. The study involved 22,000 patients being treated for HIV. The results were promising, but were different for men and women. At age 20, life expectancy for men was another 19 years. Women could expect to live 30 more years. At age 35, men could expect to live to 57. Women could expect to live to 67. Dr. Nshega says men generally start treatment later than women. By then, the disease is less treatable. He says one reason men wait may be because they spend more time looking for a job and a way to survive. The second reason is obviously the issue about stigma, which still affects a majority of people in the community. Also, programs for pregnant women mean that women have more chances to get tested for HIV and to receive treatment. Dr. Nshega says health officials need to deal with this gender imbalance. He also says we should no longer see treatment and prevention totally separately. He says treatment of HIV/AIDS is a part of prevention. Because by treating people and hopefully treating them earlier, they are less likely to transmit the virus to their sexual partner. Studies also show that giving antiretroviral drugs to uninfected people can help protect them from HIV. 2 recent studies found that taking medication daily reduced the risk of infection in heterosexuals. An earlier study showed that it reduced the risk among gay men. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. UNICEF is appealing for more than $1 billion in aid for women and children around the world. The United Nations Children's Fund has released its Humanitarian Action Report for 2010. The report lists 28 countries and territories with some of the world's most pressing crises affecting women and children. Haiti was considered to be in crisis long before the earthquake in January. The Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF, Hilda Johnson, says the quake has only made the need for aid more immediate. But she says children all over the world have the right to the same assistance. The Humanitarian Action Report discusses several issues that UNICEF says increasingly threaten the basic rights of women and children. It says climate change has caused droughts and food insecurity in many areas. High food prices and the global financial crisis of 2008-2009 have only added to poverty and malnutrition. And armed conflict continues to threaten the lives of millions. Hilda Johnson says children are always the most affected by conflicts and disasters. They face an increased risk of abuse, including sexual violence and other serious rights violations. UNICEF deals with about 200 emergencies around the world every year. The greatest need last year was in sub-Saharan Africa. The report says drought, food insecurity, and civil unrest affected about 24 million people. Violence and displacements of people were especially bad in Sudan, Chad, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. In Asia, UNICEF expects its financial assistance needs to more than double this year. This is partly the result of adding Pakistan and the Philippines to the latest report. In Pakistan, it says more than 2 million people have been forced from their homes by the conflict in the Swat Valley and other areas of the Northwest. And in the Philippines, more than 200,000 people are still living in shelters after severe storms last year. This year's UNICEF report talks about the value of public and private partnerships in helping children and families in emergencies. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. For a link to the UNICEF report listing the 28 countries and territories in crisis, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. People in a community on the Pacific Coast in Southern California awoke in March to a sea of dead fish. About 850 sailboats and powerboats come and go from the marina at King Harbor in the city of Redondo Beach. But the sardines that swam into the marina never swam out. Estimates put the number of dead fish in the millions. Reporter Pete Demetrio from KNX News Radio in Los Angeles spoke to a man who has lived in the area for 26 years. The man said the die-off was as bad as he'd ever seen, but it was cleaned up pretty quickly, so there was not too much smell. He remembered that about 5 years ago, there was another serious kill-off of fish in King Harbor. It was caused by a harmful algae bloom, a so-called red tide of microscopic organisms that spread from time to time. But this time, scientists found no toxic algae in King Harbor, so it was a mystery. A scientist at the University of Southern California released findings of continuing research in his laboratory. Professor David Caron said fish collected on March 8th, the day of the kill, tested strongly positive for domoic acid in their stomach contents. Domoic acid is a powerful neurotoxin produced by one kind of microalgae. Fish, such as sardines and anchovy, can get poisoned when they eat plankton that have eaten the algae. Researchers from USC confirmed that plankton collected about 20 kilometers southwest of Redondo Beach the next day had very high levels of domoic acid. This would support a theory that the fish became poisoned in coastal waters before entering the harbor. High levels of domoic acid in the sardines may have worsened the effects of oxygen loss in the water as the fish crowded into a limited space. Or the domoic acid may help explain why they entered the marina. Professor Karen said research shows that domoic acid poisoning can cause abnormal swimming in some kinds of fish. Harmful algae blooms are a common cause of fish kills. Domoic acid can also cause neurological disorders and death in animals that eat fish poisoned with the neurotoxin. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. If you ever miss one of our programs, go to voaspecialenglish.com to find transcripts and MP3s of all of our reports.